Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest version of Tales from Outer Space, where I take an HFY story from somewhere around the internet and read it aloud for your enjoyment. All the relevant links are down below. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube comf to help this video and channel grow. Anyways, as always, I hope that you enjoy. I would just like to thank the following Tier 5 patrons and channel members for supporting the channel: Datamagnet and Bob the Dragon. Thank you again. And now, on to the story. Humanity Fearless, written by ClocktowerEchos. There are 4 species counted amongst the war chamber of the Greater Galactic Council. The massive Cthulhu, Titan-like in size, each individual Cthulhu capable of carrying a tank's worth of weaponry and armor into battle alone. The predatory Tragnar, apex warriors and masters of the hunt, who could track a scent for miles and lunge at their prey with a brutal fury and savage efficiency. The scholarly Dalnaga, religious engineers who develop weapons of such potency, and the greatest of their creations could shatter the stars themselves had they not been bound by their faith. And then there are humans who are none of those things. They are not the strongest, nor the quickest, nor the smartest, nor the toughest, nor the most numerically vast. A single Cthulhu could comfortably take on a platoon of Terran Union soldiers, a company of them capable of fighting a Terran tank brigade to a standstill. Tragnar warpacks practically hunted freely on isolated human outposts for fun during their war with humanity, stalking from the shadows and lunging at them with the rending claws. And while they never fought the Dalnaga, reports from observers invited by the Dalnaga themselves claim to have witnessed an arsenal that made nuclear weapons, once so feared by the governments of old Earth, look like hand grenades. So why does humanity stand amongst these martial superpowers of the galaxy, you may ask? Many drunken, nationalistic ramblers and confused casual observers have asked the same. It is for one simple reason. Humans are the only species who can fight the monsters the other 3 cannot. Space is vast and dark, holding as many wonders as it does horrors. When the black fleets of the Zark came screaming out to the sunless void of darkness, they brought them primordial horrors, manifestations of terrifying unreality, and momentous of faith so eldritch it could only be described as madness. These monsters sent psychic shockwaves, crippling the minds of those who felt it with a crushing realization of existential dread. The pride all species held in their ability to have conquered their homeworlds and expanded across the stars brought down with the terrifying realization of how insignificant they were cosmologically. And where these god avatars walked, hordes of twisted, wretched, demonic abominations and feral fanatics followed. The Cthulhu were crushed like ants, their large bodies used as empty husks for the most degenerate of the Zark bio-creations that stalked battlefields like distant, shambling statues forced into torturous unlife. Tragnar hid in holes which soon became their graves, their hunting prowess meaning nothing against a foe that hunted them back with such a ruthless efficiency that just to sight one could stun a whole war pack as they remembered a time when their pre-sentient ancestors were still hunted by other predators. And the Zark had subverted the Dalnaga's weapons by attacking their controllers directly, crippling them with infectious nightmares of powerlessness and the realization that their gods had no power to protect them before harvesting their brains and knowledge for ever more sinister inventions. The council was in disarray. The many hundreds of species and thousands of planets were thrown into chaos at the onset of a foe who fed off the heights of their pride, only to cast them down into the deepest pits of despair. No one in their entire history of sapient civilization had ever conceived of such a threat. one that showed how futile their struggles were and how insignificant their creations would be. All except for one. When humans first breached the barrier of FTL, they were seen as the humblest of all races. By comparison to other species, their ships and cities lacked the huge monuments common across other planets. Boasting and bragging was seen as rude in their curious culture, and despite making it past the Great Filter, they kept showing themselves as the underdogs in their stories. Many governments thought it to be some kind of defeatist self-propaganda of a pacifist race, a notion only dispelled after the violence of human history was known, and the Terran Union brought the Tragna to a standstill in a war over colonization rights. However much respect they gained, though, was never enough to outweigh the conception that they were meek, cowardly creatures, a young race who didn't believe in its own abilities enough to reject them. The lack of hubris, as the humans saw it, did not come from a place of weakness, however, but from a place of understanding. An understanding that as far as they had come, they'd still had much to learn, and that for as much as they had to learn, the galaxy they lived in was barely a speck on the scale of the universe. Whereas the media of the other races showed them standing tall, fearless and triumphant over adversary and hardship, human media showed humans who failed to do so, overcome by a villain or greater force. Even in the situations where humans won, their path was seldom easy or smooth. To them, a 95% chance of failure wasn't certain doom, but a 5% chance of success. Uniquely amongst human media as well, they had developed the concept of existential horror, a concept utterly alien to other races of the Council. They even had a word for it that could never be properly translated: Lovecraftian. What could exist that could make existence itself seem meaningless? The Za'ark proved they could. The avatars brought on fear so ancient, so primal, that all could feel the times their ancestors were still afraid of thunder and the dark beyond meager campfires. The Cthulhu, the Tragna, the Datamagnet, they were all new to this feeling of fear embedded in their very DNA of life itself. But humans weren't. Across 1,000 worlds and for nearly 27 long, bloody years, the sons and daughters of Earth fought hopeless battles and desperate, lost stands. Often, they were the last line of defense, or sacrificial rearguard, not out of choice, but because all other forces had fled battle. Great armies were raised from humanity's many planets, colonies, and nations, her people throwing themselves into the gullets of the thirsting monsters and the maws of the laughing gods, all to buy time, to hold the line. The 93rd Kingsguard Infantry held a thin red line of the makeshift defenses on the Cthulhu world of Utgarad, refusing to retreat, even as they were overrun by the hordes of the Za'ark who torn into them. Pavelek, an invaluable industrial world, held for 3 years against a siege due to the heroic defense of the 133rd Vegetarian Infantry and the 22nd Watchtech Armored, using half-finished tanks by the end of the siege as they were overrun. The Tragna forever remember the 52nd Zulu Legion when they came to the aid of their desperate homeworld. It was the 86th Lbry and the 106th Lucky Drongos who were the first into the breach during the failed counterattack on the Za'ark fortress on the world of Yalapiat. The 71st Fujian, the 77th Chazaboy, and the 101st Screaming Eagles, and 166th Hei Hangfu all fought, bled, and died in an apocalyptic battle of the Datamagnet archive world of Iliad 6. And when the 201st Agonis Starfighter Corps discovered a Za'ark Void Forge, they rammed their fighters straight into it once their ammo ran dry, desperately preventing a creation of another Cthulhu-like god avatar. As each man and woman died, they did so with a fury and vengeance unseen by the wider galaxy on their lips, their souls burning like beacons against the endless darkness. It was humanity, bleeding and battered as it was, who led the armada that crushed the last bastion of the Zark Prime. At the helm was the battleship Silva, the greatest naval vessel ever built. 5 miles long with glistened armor, Tragnar sensor arrays, and Dalnaga guns. Battleship Silva led a combined force of over 24 species to the very gates of hell itself, where the Zark kept the most terrible god avatars. With each pass of their ethereal weapons, ships weren't just destroyed, but erased from reality itself. Some fled, others retreated to maximum weapon range. Only the ships of the Terran Navy dared to get close, to stare the abyss in the eye, and dare it to blink. And as they detonated the human Dalnaga hybrid bomb above the Zark's homeworld, the abyss blinked. Humanity is not the strongest, nor the quickest, nor the smartest, nor the strongest, nor the most numerically advanced. But they don't have to be. They never saw themselves based on what they did, but what they could do. Where everyone else had seen near certain defeat and damnation, humans bet everything on the tiniest of chances for victory, gambling against hope and forgotten gods on an underdog victory. It had been humans, the cowards, who sacrificed untold millions on planets not their own. It had been humans, the unassuming, who led the galactic armada to the Zark Prime. It had been humans, the prideless, who continued to hunt the remaining god avatars and monsters left over from the Zark to this day. It had been the humans, the humble, who had cancelled the apocalypse. It is humans, the fearless, who stand as the galaxy's monster hunters. When some new horror or monster rises out of the abyss of space, or an old one dares to reveal its hated head, it is humanity who the Cthulhu, the Tragnar, and the Dalnaga turn to. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.